Emmitt Maxwell Ferner II. Is it Emmitt Maxwell Ferner II or Emmitt Maxwell Ferner II?
Well, it's Little Emmett.
Li-
Little Emmett. So that's
what
why
does
my father's sisters. He had 7 sisters, right?
Okay.
Only boy. He had told me one time coming back from actually when he was in Vietnam, he said, "Well, this is no problem. I grew up with 7 sisters, and you were talking about stress and challenges. Like, this is no problem at all. Vietnam's easy compared to 7 sisters in the house."
He was well prepared.
Yeah. So my aunts would always refer to me as Little Emmett, and my father as Big Emmett. Even I would go back as an adult, and they would still call me. I was a Marine. They would Little Emmett, and I was like, oh, I'm maybe 3 or 4 inches taller than my dad, a bit bigger than him, but he's still big. He's Big Emmett. I'm Little Emmett. So, yeah,
Does he call you Little Emmett?
No, he doesn't. No, but they did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, sir, thank you so much for spending time with me this morning, carving out some time to be with me. You have played a prominent role in my life since my parents were dying back in 2017, and I met you briefly at some training event, and you just provided some care for me, and have kind of been encouraging me ever since then during that really difficult chapter in my life. And so I appreciate who you are and God's call over your life, and just wanted to have a series of conversations with you. Not sure exactly where this is going to go, but that's kind of what's kind of fun about this. First of all, would you mind kind of turning the camera to your wall?
Oh, well, certainly.
And telling I know what that is. People watching this, if you're listening and not watching, there's a wall covered with name tapes. And what is that for?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't meant to be really anything, but it turned into something. So, I think it was 2008 in Afghanistan. As a chaplain, you connect with soldiers from all over the place, your unit, outside your unit. I was leading a Bible study, and I think this particular soldier wasn't even assigned to my command, but he came to Bible study, and you connect with people. I got to know him pretty well, walk along with him, and then I knew he's not my unit, so he was going to redeploy at some point, and I knew that, but I don't know. As a chaplain, you don't know what your day's like, right? You think you know what your day is going to be, but it may not be that thing, right? So it was one of those days.
Kind of like today, like right now.
Today. So this soldier, I told him, hey, come swing by my office, and we'll have a cup of coffee or get something to eat, and I'll pray you out, right, and see you off. Even maybe walk down the flight line, let him get on the bird or whatever. So he came by, and I wasn't there. It's too bad, I missed him. But on my wall, I had some, what do they call it? Hook pile tape, right? Not Velcro, right? Is that trademark? Yeah. Hook pile tape. I had that's the soft stuff, the pile on my wall. And, remember everything was Velcro back then, right? Like we're starting to sew things on now, the name tapes. But back then, and these are harder to get now because everybody's sewing them on. So you really have to wrestle a guy down to get it off of him now, right? Okay. So I had it on my wall where I would just take off my patches or stuff off the kit, stick it to the wall while I maybe cleaned it or whatever. I don't know. It was on my wall, and he left his name tape. It was on the wall. I don't think. I'm guessing. I don't really know which one he was though. I don't know which one it started with.
If you're listening to this, there's about 100 name tapes on that pile.
Yeah, at least. Yeah, at least.
You don't remember which one, but
I don't remember which one. It's up there. Yeah, he's up there. And so, and then my chaplain assistant, we're religious affairs specialist now, said, "Hey, we should encourage people to do that on their way out." I thought, that's a great idea. So we did that, and it just turned out people were get really excited. Like, hey, some people wouldn't have one and go back and get one and bring it back. Hey, here's my name. And I don't know if you see on the video, but it's got the cross in the center, right? So I was thinking and then of course this evolved. Like I put a cross in the center because Christ is the center of my life, and the people that come and want to put their name on there, he's the center of their life too. I thought that works too, right? So I've drug it around in every unit I've been in since, and people have put their names on there. And and so some chaplain came in one time a while back and said, "Hey, I love your prayer blanket." I said, "There it is.
It's a
It's a prayer blanket. That's what it is." I'm not sure exactly, but so I do remember most of the folks. I think about them. I look at them. There's gold stars I pinned to the names of those who've fallen, and I don't know. It's going to be the one again. If I hang anything on my wall, it's going to be that, and
Yeah.
one other thing that's behind me, but I don't know if you want this.
That, that and your correspondence math course from the Marine Corps.
Yeah, it's right there.
For again, for those listeners and not viewing, and if you're viewing, can't really see what's behind your head, but what is it hanging on the wall?
So former Marines will love this one, right? So promotion points came. A lot of promotion points came from correspondent courses. The Marine Corps Institute, MCIs. They say, "Go get your MCI," right? There's a variety of courses. I think the Army has correspondent courses too, but it was funny. I was at ILE with a Marine major. Him and he was a prior enlisted Marine. I'm not even sure if officers in the Marine Corps take correspondent courses, MCIs. I don't know, but we certainly did. And so we got to joking about the kind of ones. And if you know the Marine Corps, it's they have one that's called Math for Marines, and we just got a kick out of that. That's what that says. That's a diploma. And we thought it's really cool because it's in color. It's got the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor on there. It's just look at it. It's a nice diploma, right? But it's in dot matrix. Where it fed through the printer. It says Math for Marines. Lance Corporal Furner graduated that. I have one for spelling for Marines too, but I didn't want to show off.
Yeah.
Too much.
You've
too many diplomas.
You've come a long way.
Too many diplomas can be a little off-putting.
Yes, pretentious. Pretentious is the word.
Yeah, I don't want to. Anyway, thanks for asking about the prayer blanket. It's really important to me.
Yeah.
It'll go with me. I mean,
wherever you go.
Yeah, wherever I go. Yeah, my ultimate little man cave in the forever home. I could see it being right there, center mass. So.
Sir, I wanted to spend some time talking with you about moral injury, and kind of how you've developed your understanding of it, and how you teach it, and how you help people understand it. But along getting to that's probably down in the conversation, maybe next conversation. But before we get to that, you're writing a book right now, or you finished. Have you finished the book?
Well, I don't know what finished. Sometimes you don't know what finished is.
You sent it to the publisher, right?
Yeah, it's out there for a couple, right? Yeah.
And it's is it Take Care of Them? Is that the name of it?
Taking Care of Them. Yeah.
Taking Care of Them.
Yeah.
So can you? It's the story of a convicted first sergeant who took some action in Iraq. Mm-hmm. And it's the story of Major Robert Fitzgerald, who's kind of doing his thesis from CGS. He's writing his thesis on moral leadership or something like that. And he wants to use First Sergeant Tobias. What is the First Sergeant's name?
Yeah, Tobias. Yeah.
First Sergeant Tobias. He wants to kind of study him, use him as a case study for why senior leaders go off the rails and become, I guess, unethical leaders or whatever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm butchering it a little bit, but can you kind of give us a synopsis of this story and kind of the overview of it?
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, so it's based really loosely on a real story that happened in Iraq in 2007. This first sergeant shot and killed some detainees that they had apprehended. Detained them, flex cuffed them, blindfolded them, and then shot them in the head and dumped them in a canal outside of Baghdad. And it was later, about a year later, it came to light when they redeployed, and they court-martialed him and two NCOs in his company for doing that. And I think he was just released from the disciplinary barracks at Fort Leavenworth maybe a couple years ago. Anyway, CNN did a story on him. In fact, what really introduced me to it was a chaplain friend of mine was at First Sergeant's chaplain in Iraq. He invited me over one time to say, "Hey, I want you to watch this CNN special," and we watched it together. And the reason CNN did a 2-part series, I think it was 2-part series on it, because it was so unusual. Why would a first sergeant who was known as one of the best NCOs in First Infantry Division, who was selected for the Sergeant's Major Academy, deferred that so he could redeploy, I think, for the third time with his soldiers to Iraq. Why would he murder 3 detained, blindfolded, flex-cuffed people? Why would he do that? He definitely didn't leave a murder, but he came back one. Fascinating topic, and it was fascinating to CNN for that reason. The same reason it's fascinating to me is the why behind it. So I did the MMAS degree at ILE, the master's degree, military arts and science, and I studied that. I did a case study. I didn't really arrive at any. It's a brief program. I didn't really arrive at any novel conclusion to that. I did explore utilitarianism, and maybe he had to do what he had to do to take care of his soldiers, kind of thing. But then I thought, well, I really love this story, and I really consider my first love, well, second love, is fiction writing. So I wrote a story about it. I kind of did things my own way in it. I think there were some things I disagreed with that he did leading up to it, the event, and I wasn't coming at it from an ethical standpoint. I was coming from a responsibility, so almost like what would you do to save your children kind of thing. And I thought that's a unique idea. So I wrote it out. I changed it from me doing the research to an infantry major who's struggling with some, what he sees as some mistakes that he made in Afghanistan that got some of the soldiers killed. So he's wrestling with that. I think he's projecting onto this first sergeant as the bad guy. So I have themes of forgiveness, redemption, all tied in that story. So I try to tell that the grace, redemption, forgiveness ideas into the story. So anyway, sorry, it's a long way to say that it's just a journey. I think what this major learns about leadership, he learns from a visitation room at the disciplinary barracks as opposed to the classroom at ILE.
I remember as I was listening to it, as you were writing it, you were sharing me the Speechify files or whatever you call those. I remember listening to it and thinking how self-righteous Major Fitzgerald was. Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks to, I don't know if you intentionally did that, but I think that is symbolic or represents our society and how self-righteous we are, where we're so quick to point the finger, but we're so slow to kind of look within and see the transgressions that we have as a society. Mm-hmm. And kind of, we'll get into this, but when we send people to war and we ask them to do inhuman things that we're not designed to do, that we weren't created to do, and then we point the finger at them when they make mistakes, and we don't take any of the responsibility for it, I think that's self-righteousness. Was that something you intentionally did?
I did intentionally do that. I think for me, I was trying to develop the character in a way to show he's deeply wounded, right? So he's overcompensating. He's projecting all that onto this first sergeant inmate. He's the most wounded of them all. In fact, I don't think the first sergeant's wounded at all. I don't think he has any remorse for what he did. I think what he did, he believed he had to do, and it was just part of the responsibility. I think if you remember, I developed the character. Of course, I made all this up, and I'm from West Virginia. Why would I not include coal mining town and some gorge? And his father gave up his life to save his soldiers, so I think he had that burn into him. But for the major, he's deeply hurting. He's got an alcohol problem. He's suicidal, but he's projected. He's this great officer, and then there's this first sergeant who isn't a great leader, and he's going to try to understand and write a thesis to describe great leadership and probably use himself as an example. And here's a bad leader, and that's what that looks like. And here's how you fix these leadership problems in the Army. When really he's internally he's saying, "I'm the worst leader. I failed as a leader."
I think some of the tension you develop too in the story is how he's the first sergeant who is convicted of murder. He had integrity in the way he took care of his soldiers. And the officer, Major Fitzgerald, he is the righteous one, and he is failing to take care of his own family because of the wound inside of him. So the irony there is poignant.
Yeah, yeah. He's masking all this too, right? So
Mm-hmm.
he's got a failed marriage. He doesn't have a great relationship with his children. Again, he's self-medicating with alcohol. There's a scene in there. I may have introduced this scene since you've last listened to it. A scene where he's actually considering suicide, and to further develop the pain and suffering that he's going through this. So his failure was following the rules too closely, the rules of
Mm-hmm.
engagement. He wouldn't allow his soldiers to defend themselves, and they were killed, which he thought he was doing the right thing by following the rules. And then, of course, the first sergeant is the antagonist, the counter of that, where he broke the rules to save his soldiers. So you see the rule follower and the consequences, and then the rule breaker and the consequences. I think there's even a line in there where I have the first sergeant say, "I'd rather be in here than out there with you. Like I'd rather.
Yes.
I'm okay. I can sleep at night. You probably can't." So they
Mm.
they 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 in the so most of the scenes happen in the disciplinary barracks visitation room,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Over
through
games
those,
of chess.
yeah, over games of chess, they play
Yeah.
each other chess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, thanks for
Well,
asking about it.
yeah, I'm excited. I look forward to seeing it get published. I don't know how that works. I've never written a novel before, so
Yeah,
this is really cool.
yeah.
Can I just say that I know you once the book gets
You
published?
absolutely can. Sometimes I struggle with naming characters and supporting characters. So you might wind up in there. I'll ask you first for your permission, but like
I'll be the foil,
you might wind up in there.
the antagonist. Okay.
You could, yeah.
So I'm just curious. I really look forward to hearing you kind of talk through the model that you've designed to help you explain and understand moral injury for yourself. But your story growing up is, I think, has a lot to do with why you're interested in moral injury and just how it has uniquely shaped who you are. You've been in the military for how many years now? You started out in the Marines, without betraying your age.
Yeah.
Uh, how
Yeah.
many?
Wow. How much? I don't know. So I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps in 1990. Joined the break between the Marine Corps and the Army was a couple of years, at West Virginia University, commissioned ROTC, came in the Army. So I was 2 years in the National Guard at that time. Then separated from regular Army, a couple more years of Army Reserve time, and then back on the regular Army as a chaplain. So something like that. So I've never been not in uniform, right? So,
Mm.
for those 4 years of reserve component, I was still in uniform. So since 1990, I've been doing this. Um, yeah. Somebody said, hey, I don't know. I don't know what they said, but I was like, I'm not a lifer.
I'm not a what?
A lifer. I'm pretty sure I'm a
Oh, I'm not
lifer
a
now, aren't
lifer.
I?
Yeah,
I think I'm
you
a
are.
lifer. I never
More
thought of
time
myself as a
in
lifer.
uniform than not, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you sleep in your green undershirt?
I do not.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Well,
I
good.
do not. That's good. Is that good? It sounds good not to do
I
that.
don't
So,
know. There might be some mental health issues there if you did.
yeah, it might
Um,
be. Yeah.
will you share a little bit about your dad's story
Oh,
and
yeah.
what it was like growing up in the home of a Vietnam veteran?
Yeah, sure will. Yeah. So, yeah, obviously in Vietnam era, they didn't wear, hook pile tape, on their uniforms.
They use
But
starch,
they
right?
use starch. Yeah. I think, yeah. Um, but I put his name up there on the board.
Hmm.
So to represent him. Yeah. My hero for sure. Right. Yeah. He's so, sixth grade education, I think, West Virginia. His father, black lung from the coal mines, tuberculosis, died, I think, a day or before or after I was born. So I never met his father. He was raised by what they call a horse trader. I don't know if that title can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. I don't think it's always a positive horse trading. Um, but put shoes on horses. So this guy raised my father pretty much, right, when my grandfather was sick, and he taught him how to be a blacksmith farrier, right. And so my dad goes off to Vietnam at 18, comes back missing a leg. He lost his right leg, and 1969 in Cu
Was it a
Chi, Vietnam.
mine or a
It was. He ran
mortar?
the only
Or
time he ever drove a truck. I ran over a landmine. Coming, he's with the 25th ID. He's a Ford Observer, 227. I think that's who he was with. Yeah. So he had a friend that was an artilleryman, and of course he's a Ford Observer, so he's moving forward with the infantry company. He comes out and his friend says, "Hey, my soldier has a pay problem. He needs to go right to HQ and we need to go left. So I need to drive his truck. Will you drive mine?" And of course, my dad's like, "Heck yeah, I want to drive a truck. I've been walking this whole tour in Vietnam." And my dad's almost done with his tour at that point too. So, um, so my, so this soldier says, "Hey, just jump in my truck. You drive it." In fact, I think my dad was so excited, he went and got a couple of his buddies to ride with him. Like, "Hey, we got a truck to drive. We don't have to walk." So they jumped in the truck, and at some point they hit a landmine. The engine block got pushed right up through the floorboard and threw them all free. I think one of his buddies lost both legs. One lost a leg and arm, something like that. He lost contact with them after that. He had reached out, but it was hard to find him. One of them was a Canadian guy, and the other one, he just lost track of him. So, so my father comes back to West Virginia, marries a woman who's just her upbringing was just challenging. My mother was just really challenged, and she left when we were pretty young. So my father, I think, does what good soldiers do, just accepted the mission and raised my brother and I by himself, working 2 or 3 jobs, putting shoes on horses, working at a factory, that kind of thing. So I guess that communicated early, service, sacrifice, the cost of all this. I saw that as a kid. You think and not this, and it wasn't just the missing leg, although that was ever visible to me as a child. I think it was the nightmares and that kind of thing were there. I think I normalized that. That's what Vietnam veterans do, right? Sometimes. So I think looking back on it, I go, man, that's God's hand in that, right? That He gave me those experiences and the kind of work that He's called me to do now. I see my father in so many soldiers, so it's important for me. So I reached out to, my dad's not the most computer savvy guy. So a few years ago, I reached out and I so, okay, you got to love Army's process systems. And so they redact. So my father had requested some records, some military records. And one of the records that he received, and I'm not even sure where it even came from, was a copy of the log, the artillery log for that day, with the expended rounds and just a typical log, right? And in that log is my father's dust off, where they come and pick him up, which I was like, wow, man, that's a pretty cool document to have, right? So, and it has his 2 buddies in there, right? And their service numbers. They use socials, they use service numbers. But if you hold it, so it's redacted. But if you hold it up to the light, true Army fashion, you can see the numbers, right? You can just look like. So I started typing their service numbers into the internet and their names, and I get a call, right? I think I registered for some veteran website or something, and then pretty much just told my father's story on there, the dates, times, and all that stuff. And this guy calls me, and he says, "Emmett, I thought you were dead." And I said, "Well, I'm not, and I think you're probably referring to the other Emmett. By chance, he's still alive as well." And this was the guy that asked my father to drive his truck. Isn't that crazy? So I was like, wow. So this guy's telling me the story of watching my father get blown up through it was a Cuck V he was in, the pickup trucks. Seeing my father get blown up. Of course, they have to move through there, right? They can't stop, right? Their SOP was to push through the ambush, if it was an ambush or whatever it was, get away from it, right? And by that time, he was already far off, and they had medevac my father out, and he never saw him again, thought he was dead. And he had a lot of guilt, thinking that the reason my father died was because he was driving my truck. He lives out in Washington State, and I connected him with my father. I was delicate about it too, because I was careful. Like, I didn't want to introduce something to my father that he wasn't comfortable in, being introduced to or reliving. So, but it worked out fine. He brought a lot of pictures my dad didn't have from Vietnam, so I got some pretty cool pictures of my father that I wouldn't have otherwise had. And he flew to Ohio where my father lives now, and they spent the day together. And I thought that was really
Wow.
cool. Yeah.
When was that? When did he fly to Ohio?
Oh, this was probably 2006, 7, something like that, maybe.
Okay, so it's been
Maybe
a
a little
while.
later. It's been a little bit. Yeah.
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 And but just not that. But to hear that him tell that story that I had grown up hearing from my father is emotional for me. I don't. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. It's yeah. So that's yeah. West Virginia coal mining. You know, kind of rough around the edges folks I grew up with,
Mm-hmm.
my aunts and uncles, and good people, but they're true West
Mm-hmm.
Virginians for sure.
Yeah.
Proud of it. I came back out of the Marine Corps and chose West Virginia University as the school I wanted to go to because I just thought if I'm anything, I'm a hillbilly. We lived in Ohio for a little while, just across the river, but yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
I hope that answers
Yeah.
that.
Thank you for sharing your
Yeah.
father's story. I'm sure that, well, I look forward to hearing how that has kind of shaped um, who you are, your calling. And hey, so it's 7 o'clock. Um, can you kind of give us a preface to your understanding of what moral injury is, or do we need to go ahead and do that in our next conversation?
I think we have time to do that.
Okay, yeah. So,
It's actually 1300, Pete.
oh yeah, it's the top of the hour.
This is time for
Have you heard any roosters in the background?
I sure hope you get some of
Out
those in the recording. I don't
out
think this
here
is.
in Hawaii, we wake up every morning at about 5 to roosters. And you might hear my kids running down the hallway as they're getting ready for school. But
Well, I sure hope so. I think it just makes this time together better.
yeah, it does. So, what is moral injury
Ooh, I don't
according to
know.
Dr. Furner? So, by the
Ooh, I
way,
don't know.
you did your PhD in moral injury. Can you kind of briefly describe what your PhD is in? And
Yeah. Practical theology. So, applying theological thoughts to, the praxis of chaplaincy is what I did, right? So, I take my theological presuppositions and then I take a look at what I'm doing as a chaplain and try to, I guess, make theological sense of that. So that's essentially what I did. I tried to do. I, I chose moral injury as something to examine. For one reason, it has gained, it's continuing to gain some popularity among the helping professionals. So I think it's a worthwhile. I thought it was a worthwhile exercise. The deeper I dug, probably the more confused I became. But that's okay. I think it's the type of topic that has so many different angles that you could pick this thing up and turn it and spin it around, Rubik's Cube style, and see it from different places. And I'll try to do that with you the next time we meet. I think that's healthy. I think trying to find one solid definition is hard, and I'll explain later why that I think that is. If you look at the PTSD center of the VA hospital, I could send you a link to it, but it does its best to define moral injury. It's not a clinical, it's not a recognized DSM clinical diagnosis. It has a variety of different authors that have contributed to that narrative. Jonathan Shea being sort of the founding father of it. Again, I'll get into that as well. But you can see in their definition, they have jammed together some definitions from different scholars, and it's pretty lengthy, and you can see it's quite involved. And we could talk through that definition. Might be something we could do to tease out like what are some of these key aspects of it, or symptomology, that kind of thing. So yeah, I would say moral injury. Wow. See, it's hard to define. I think I see moral injury is we're looking at symptoms. We're looking at signs, symptoms, biopsychosocial impairment that appears to be related to experiencing or maybe more specifically participating in the organized destruction of human life that we sterilize and call combat operations or combat or whatever, right? So that something about that experience, whether through an act of omission or commission, is causing biopsychosocial impairment. It's got a lot of clinicians and other disciplines scratching their head, asking, well, why is this? They've not done anything illegal, but they're experiencing or demonstrating, guilt, shame, self-condemnation. So it's got a lot of people interested. How could someone come back and be suffering so greatly, having done something that was right to do according to, sociocultural expectations and norms? So that's unique. I think a lot of people are coming from it from that angle, scratching their head. Jonathan Shea, the original kind of, he was a psychiatrist and really kind of coined it. And what he was doing is providing group therapy to Vietnam veterans post Vietnam, and he was treating them for PTSD. But what they were exhibiting, reporting, or showing was impairment that defied the symptom modalities of the time. There was no improvement through PTSD type treatments. So it was resistant to those things that Jonathan Shea had available to him. So he coined this moral injury, this idea there's something. So I think he defines it something like it's a violation, perceived or actual violation of a deeply held moral belief through an act of omission or commission in a high stakes situation. Again, I'll unpackage some of that later, but.
Is the nuance between like PTSD? It would be PTSD is kind of trauma for the mind, and moral injury is trauma for the soul. Is that an oversimplification?
No, I don't think it is in this narrative, and whomever contributes to it. I'd encourage people from all disciplines to contribute to this narrative. But I don't think that's not necessarily a bad way to look at it. The problem with that is that you're going to have to define morality. That's going to be the hard part, right? What is a violation of what is a deeply held moral belief? So that's where I started. I was fascinated. A clinician would be referring to things like human morality and ethics of war, where they don't really have a vocabulary for it. So I thought, well, okay, well that's fine. I can go for that definition, but the onus is on the person who produces that definition to define what a deeply held moral belief is. Just something. Okay. And why do you have it? Why can't you change it? And why is it so violated? When you do violate it, what do you mean by violating it? Again, the assessment of this is all going to have to come through signs and symptoms, reported things. Here's how I feel, or things that a clinician would see evident in them, what they're presenting. That's about all you have. There's no brain scans, or I don't think there's any blood tests and stuff. Although you see some research there that tries to get after the scientific part of this, but like that's all you have to operate off of. Then you have a bunch of assumptions.
So you feel comfortable starting off with Shea's definition?
That's
kind of
so.
Your start launching point.
That's where most people do.
Yeah,
that's what people. Yeah, I think so.
And it's not just about war. It's about anything, any transgression of what one thinks is right or wrong, whether they are the one who perpetrated that wrong, or they were the victim of that, or if they witnessed it. Correct. So there's several different dimensions or perspectives that this could cause that injury.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's so. I've heard somebody say that like PTSD is something happened to me, very traumatic event, which has caused some problems with my fear response syndrome, and that's where the nightmares, flashbacks. But then I think more injury is probably more along the lines of I did something. It was me. Mm-hmm. I'm the one that took that action that caused the child to bleed out in my arms. I thought it was the bad guys, but it was actually a child in the car that we shot. Mm-hmm. And now I've done that. So then I need to try to reconcile that. Mm-hmm. And I can live. And so, yeah, I think what you see in the research too is that PTSD, the treatments are probably relatively good. And you can see some improvements in quality of life, but not. I think more injuries like straight clear through. Like we're seeing a lot in Vietnam vets. They're in their 70s now, still struggling with things they did when they were 18. Mm-hmm. They can't seem to reduce the dissonance. There's this cognitive dissonance between I did for my country what it's asked me to do, and I should be considered a war hero. I should consider myself a war hero, but then I feel like I'm the worst human ever. for the things I had to do. And then it's further triggered through ticker tape parades and people at the airport with signs saying you did a great job. And they're thinking, I don't think I did a great job.
Yeah, my goodness. This is going to be a long series of conversations as we kind of peel back the onion. I look forward to it. I know you have to go. I think that's a great way. We'll kind of put this on pause. That's a great way to set it up. And then in our next conversation, I'd love to hear you talk about the prodigal son.
Oh, sure.
And the way you describe it is very compelling and has stuck with me. And so, look forward to you kind of unpacking that, if you will.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Any closing thoughts before we end this first conversation?
No, thank you, Pete. Again, it just goes to show how much I care about you. This is probably not something that I'm necessarily comfortable with. I'm more of a behind the scenes person, a little bit of an introvert. So for me to do this, but it's good. I'm glad we were doing it. I'm already experiencing like our conversation, although you're intending for this to be shared with people to listen to or watch. But I also like that this format allows you and I to talk in a way that we wouldn't otherwise talk. So that's cool, right?
Yeah.
You and I do a lot of time just kind of jacking around, telling jokes and stuff. But this forces us to be maybe, I wouldn't say more serious, but like force us to talk in a way that we wouldn't otherwise talk. And I think this is good. Just chatting with you today is even if nobody listens or watches, which I'm sure they will because you're good at what you're doing. But at least I'm getting something out of it. So thank you.
Great. Well, our next conversation is tomorrow again at 1300 your time, 600 my time with the Roosters.
Sounds great.
So I look forward to it.
All right. Thanks, Pete.